Here are the 6 things to look out for on a nutrition label. Once you know these, it should take you less than 30 seconds to look at a label and determine whether or not a food is a healthy option for you. But if you don't know how to go through and evaluate the nutrition facts yourself, chances are very high you'll make the mistake of falling for a bunch of different tactics that food marketers use to make you believe the foods you're buying and eating are healthy. So it's up to you to know how to read the labels and understand the nutrition facts. I've read over a dozen different books on this topic, and these are without doubt the 6 most important things. But after we go through them, I'll give you 2 extra bonus tips that'll make your life a little bit easier. The first thing you want to look at on the label is whether or not there's any added sugar. Added sugar is refined before it's added to foods, so it's absorbed unnaturally quickly in your body and ends up spiking your blood sugar, and over time can damage your metabolism, leading to metabolic dysfunction and diseases like type 2 diabetes, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, Alzheimer's, and eventually cardiovascular disease. With added sugar, the lower the content, the better. 0 grams is ideal. And after you look for added sugar, the next thing you want to look at is the ingredient list. If the food has more than 4 different ingredients on the list, there's a very good likelihood that that food was ultra processed, which ends up destroying healthy nutrients and leads to harmful compounds forming. When you're looking at the ingredient list, there are 3 categories that you really want to avoid. The first is sugar alternatives, and there are over 100 different ways that food marketers can hide sugar on the label. Just on this label here, corn syrup and fructose are 2 perfect examples. Even glycerin on this label is a sugar alternative because it's a sugar alcohol. The next category you want to avoid are refined grains and flours, because in ultra-processed foods, these have the exact same impact on your body that added sugar does. They are rapidly absorbable and will damage your metabolism over time. And the last category you really want to avoid on the ingredient list are the industrial seed and vegetable oils. These are heavily processed using chemical solvents and really high heat, so all of the fat content in them gets damaged and ends up harming your body when you consume it. An example on this label here is canola oil, but there's also a handful of others you definitely want to try to avoid. After you look at the ingredients, the next thing you want to look for is trans fat. And there are actually 2 ways to spot this. Most times you're not going to see trans fat on the label. It's actually banned in the United States. But here's the thing that most food marketers don't want you to know. If there's a high polyunsaturated fat content and you're going to use that product for cooking, there's a very high likelihood that a bunch of those polyunsaturated fats are going to turn into trans fats under high heat. That's part of the reason the industrial seed and vegetable oils are so harmful to your body and highly inflammatory, because they're very high in polyunsaturated fats, and most of us are told that we should be using them to cook. So when we use them to cook, those polyunsaturated fats, they turn into trans fats, which are highly toxic and damaging to the body. So after checking on the fat content and looking out for trans fats, the next thing you want to look at is the serving size. It's easy to look at a label and see 1 to 2 grams of added sugar and think, this isn't too bad. But if you're not careful and you don't check the serving size, you may not realize that you're eating 5 or more of those servings, so you're actually getting 10 or more grams of the added sugar. This is especially important when you're looking at condiments, because certain hot sauces that may have agave or other sugar alternatives may label very low amounts of sugar, but when you look at the serving size, there's 96 servings, and you're going to go through the bottle in 20 meals. So just be mindful of the number of servings and the serving size. And after you go through and check the servings, the next 2, number 5 and 6, are things that you really want to prioritize in foods. The first is protein. Out of all the macronutrients, protein takes the most energy to digest. It's really good for protecting your muscle. It's important for your brain and the production of hormones and neurotransmitters. And it also leaves you feeling full, so you don't end up snacking or run the risk of eating junk foods later on. So prioritize a higher protein content. I personally try to aim to eat at least 30 grams of complete protein in every meal that I have. And after you check the protein content, you also want to look at the fiber content. Fibers in food are long chains of sugars, but they're much different than added sugar because your body has to break them down, so they're very slow to digest, and a lot of times your body actually doesn't digest them at all. They pass through your entire body. So the more fiber that you see in food, the slower your body is going to absorb the other carbohydrates that you have with that meal. And another quick calculation you can make is looking at the total carbohydrate content on the label and subtracting the fiber content. That's actually going to give you an indication of how much extra sugar is in that food. In other words, the difference is going to be carbohydrates that are more rapidly absorbable. So those are the 6 main things you want to look for when you're going through a nutrition label. But I'll also give you a 7th, which is a bonus tip. And this is to look at the micronutrient content. High levels of micronutrients on the label is a really good indication that the food you're looking at was probably minimally processed. Because as I said before, ultra processing, because it happens at really high heat, it has all these chemical solvents, it ends up destroying the micronutrient content. And the last tip that I'll leave you with, which is the single best rule for evaluating whether or not a food is healthy, is whether or not it's just a single ingredient. Things like eggs, meat, poultry, fruits, vegetables, minimally processed dairy, nuts. Doing so is actually going to help you follow all the other rules on this list without having to necessarily go through them. It's also going to help you avoid things like chemical additives, preservatives, and other artificial ingredients. It's not enough to look and see how foods are labeled, because food marketers will use terms like heart healthy or all natural that really mean nothing. If you want to make sure the foods you're eating are healthy, you have to take ownership over that. And it starts with understanding how to read the label. So I hope this was helpful. My name's Andrew. I'm the founder of Longevity Lifestyle. And if you want more content like this, then be sure to like and subscribe. I'll see you on the next video.